Okay, so I don't see that we have any attendees. If we do end up getting any attendees, hopefully I'll notice that pop up on my screen. But we do, I did mention, I don't know if you guys know Luke Havel. I talked to him last week about ADUs, since he's one of those folks who's trying to get a home office in his over his garage for his wife. And so I talked to him on Friday. So I'd mentioned to him that we meet via Zoom if he wanted to join. He was more than welcome to. But anyway, so I'll call the meeting to order. We really, since it's just the three of us, honestly, one of the things that after I talked to Karen, she was like, oh yeah, I don't go through that whole like calling, roll call and any of that stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, whatever. So as long as you guys, you got the minutes from the meeting, the last meeting, were there any changes or concerns about the minutes from the last meeting?
No.
Yeah.
All right. So then we'll assume or, motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Motion to approve, or yes, or
Seconded.
All right. Thank you. So I have on my other computer, I actually have the Google Doc up, and because I can't access that from my work computer, it sort of limits the how often I can look at it. So I know, and I can't remember, one of you guys was editing recently, so I don't know if you both have had a chance.
I went through and put some comments in. I didn't make it through the entire document
Right.
with comments, but I figured we wouldn't get through the entire document on this meeting anyway. So.
Oh, no, definitely not. Kristen, have you had a chance to go in and add any comments yet?
yeah, I put several comments in yesterday.
Okay, all right, great. So to be honest, since Amber's not here tonight, I know she had added some comments as well. I kind of want to continue like that conversation within the document. If you guys are okay with that. But one of the, sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay. I thought I heard somebody. Because I like the idea of the transparency and sort of keeping the comments within the document. But one of the things that I do want to fast track, if you will, is the conversation around ADUs. Because I know we kind of started that, and since it is later in the document, if you guys are okay with it, I kind of want to just talk through some thoughts and then make that kind of a priority for marking up and commenting before our next meeting. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
So as you know, ADU definition, accessory dwelling unit, that's what the planning geeks call them. In our ordinances, it's section 56.558. So it is just, and of course I don't have a mouse on my other computer, so I'm using the touchpad and it's kind of annoying. Permitted.
Do you know what page that is, or?
Yes, it is page 69.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, so if you're skipping ahead to that, it's basically, it's just called accessory uses. So the terminology ADU, that's the section that I'm talking about, is accessory uses, because there are several things that are legal accessory uses, like, putting a shed in your backyard, having a garage. You know, having a kids playhouse, having a swimming pool, a tennis court. I don't know anybody that's got enough space for a tennis court. So, but the thing that we want to, I think, change, update, incorporate is to get a little bit more lenient on the accessory uses so that somebody can have a home office or a mother-in-law's suite, or if they have the space, they could potentially maybe even have an apartment above their garage or whatever. And this is like kind of where we get to that, like, how far do we go versus, you know, taking smaller baby steps? Or do we want to say, you know, yes, if you have an apartment above your garage, you can rent it out? Or do we want to say, no, you can have a home office, but you can't rent that to a stranger? You know what I mean? So I don't know. What do you guys think in terms of like where you're at, where the community is for this issue?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused because there's a whole other section in this document about operating a business out of your home. So this is different than that. This is about just having a home office. Like, I guess I didn't even realize we weren't allowed to, like, I have an office.
Well, so this would be a separate structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like building on like a sunroom, but instead of a sunroom, you build on an office, or building on a, that's what I'm trying to,
It's totally
not
separate from your main home, correct?
okay, so it's not attached.
Correct.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, got it.
Yeah. So, and that's, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Airbnb. I'm drawing a blank on what street it's on, but it's the really, really nice Airbnb that it used to be a garage. They converted it to an Airbnb. And the only way they are able to use it as an Airbnb is because they actually constructed a breezeway that connects their house to this garage. And I mean, our laws regarding Airbnb require that the owner be present on property, and that's a whole separate issue. But yeah, so if you think about a detached garage being an accessory use, it is legal as an accessory use unless you put in plumbing. So if you put in plumbing, it becomes like another primary residence or primary living or something on your property. So that's where people who are unfamiliar with the codes have gotten into trouble. Where in the case of Luke, he was, you know, adding this, I guess, second story onto his garage, finishing out the space. And his contractor, unfortunately, encouraged him to rough in the plumbing, saying it would be cheaper for you now to rough in the plumbing while we're still framing everything up. And because he did that, it didn't pass his framing inspection. And they basically had to rip out everything that they did in order to pass the framing inspection. So the conversation that I had with Luke was, yeah, how do we avoid this problem in the future so that, you know, it's clear, first of all, because as you guys already know, our ordinances are certainly not easy to read and not easy to understand. So, you know, if someone wants to put a sink in their garage so they can wash paintbrushes, that technically makes it an accessory living unit and makes it illegal. So, and that's where, I mean, we know people have sinks in their garages. So it's, you know, I guess, does that sort of clarify, Angela, the difference of what we're talking about?
Yeah, it does. I guess I'm curious, like, how often does this how often do we not grant like conditional use if somebody wants to put a sink in their garage to wash paintbrushes. Like, is anybody getting cited for that, or?
No, but we also don't grant conditional uses for that. So
Gotcha.
because it's
Okay.
prohibited, it's not considered a conditional use. So this would be definitely one of those things where if we added something in the language about it being a conditional use, then the city council, the planning and zoning commission could then approve it as a conditional use based on, do you have parking? Do you have, is there enough of a setback? Is it, primarily for a home office? Are you gonna be seeing, clients out of this home office? All of those things that go into their decision about conditional uses that then goes to council.
And that was kind of what I was wondering, like what the rationale was to limit plumbing, so, because to me, it sounds like whoever created these ordinances did not want another almost livable structure within two livable structures within one property is what I'm gathering.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, and what did they? I'm just curious what they thought of would be like the downfall of two livable structures on one property.
There are a couple that, just, I guess, to give you guys a little bit of history, there are a couple that are still grandfathered in. So I know for sure there's actually one right around the corner from me, where it's a completely separate residence that's on the same property. So and they rent it out, and so in the I guess, the whole idea of decreasing density. So going back to, one house, one per lot, one family, one, only X number of children in the school, only X number of people in the house, all of those things to sort of limit the density that we have. That may be why all of these things were prohibited at one point. But the pendulum has come the other direction now, where we're clearly in a place where if we want people to stay in Maplewood, we want to keep Maplewood affordable. This is one way to increase our density without trying to do kind of what Webster did, which is, changing everything from single family, or, 70% of their city from single family to multifamily. So, that's the big broad brush stroke that I don't think Maplewood wants to do, or I don't know if we would, even get the support of the city or the community, if you will, kind of like Webster ran into. To do that. And that's pretty drastic when you're talking about, if all of a sudden single family homes get torn down and someone puts up a multifamily, then kind of what Anthony had talked about when he joined us, where, that puts a pressure on the school district and things like that. So, so the accessory units is a way to take a baby step towards that. And an even baby step is if we only allow it as a home office, or, a yoga studio, or, whatever, because you've simply outgrown your little Maplewood house. But, you happen to have a really big yard with a nice big garage, and, you could put a home office in there and a yoga studio, and then you don't have to worry about, coming back and forth to the main house to use a bathroom. So that's kind of, so that what I'd like to do is to get this section sort of across the finish line first, because I think even with the new council, which, I mean, there's two members that I don't know at all yet. I haven't, barely spoken to them in person. Everyone that I know, and reading their platforms and understanding what they were running for, everyone is concerned about affordable housing. So I think even with the new council, this is one thing that we would have support across the entire council for. And if we could get this accomplished quickly, then that's something else that we can just check it off the list and move on through some of the other things that are, maybe a little bit more challenging, changing single family to multifamily or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I'm having a hard time connecting the dots between accessory use and affordable housing. So how would building an office contribute to affordable housing? How would putting an Airbnb shed in the backyard contribute to affordable housing, like that sort of thing?
Well, putting a home office or a yoga studio does not necessarily, if you're using it for your own purposes, doesn't necessarily make your Maplewood more affordable. It really is only going to contribute to affordable housing if we make it truly a living space where someone could potentially rent it out. Either, and Airbnb is really, that's a slippery slope. And I really hate that phrase, just, but Airbnb, because Airbnb brings its own set of problems. You could potentially be renting it out to strangers literally every night of the week, and somebody could be having a party right next to your neighbor's backyard. But if you were able to rent it out to, a tenant long-term, obviously that offsets your mortgage. Or if it's a mother-in-law suite, so that you have, additional living space, that helps keep Maplewood more affordable, because, then you have additional adults or adult children living with you and helping to pay the bills or pay your mortgage.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, and just having the space to grow into your house, it might allow you to keep, if you can move your home office there, then, it might keep people in Maplewood, because if they have the need, as so many of us are working from home, they have the need for that extra space, but, all of their bedrooms are committed to their various children, that, might still keep people in Maplewood rather than selling. And then it feels like every time a house sells in Maplewood, it just, the sky's the limit on how much the houses are going for. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I don't see a reason why we wouldn't allow for, if you want to build a structure and it's an office or it's your yoga studio, or if it's your, especially if it's your office, like, I don't know why we would ever prohibited that in the first place. So that to me feels like an opportunity area for sure. I think where I struggle a little bit is with you on the Airbnb part of it, where it's like, do we want to put that in writing, that these can become, very temporary rental units, or does that need to be like something that you ask for instead? Yeah. But I'm basing that off of like sensational news reports too. So I don't know, like, I use Airbnb. I think it's a cool service, but do I want my next door neighbor having an Airbnb shed in the backyard? And,
Right.
that I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our Airbnb ordinance is written pretty strictly, if you've ever read it, that if you're going to host an Airbnb, you have to be physically present on site when that space is rented. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I know that there are plenty of Airbnbs that do not abide by that. But again, the city's not going out hunting for people in violation. So, to answer the question from earlier about, if somebody has a sink in their garage, that's not something that the city's going to go after people for. It's just as, people like Luke and some other, a few other folks in recent years who have tried to, modify their garages to make it as living space. That's where, they run into the confusion of the language, and then, they learn pretty quickly as soon as they try to get permits and things like that, that it's not allowed.
Yep. We run into that personally with our basement has essentially what should be able to be used as an extra bedroom, but the city does not recognize it as such because it doesn't have the right size window or that sort of thing, where it's like, yeah, we can have a guest stay down there overnight, but we use it as, storage space, but it's like, technically this should be a 3-bedroom home, but per the ordinances, it's not. So, but yeah.
And that's the perfect example of our houses are generally, some of us have small houses, and our houses are old, so our basements are not legal living space in the vast majority of Maplewood houses. So, so that's not an option for most people to have an extra bedroom or, even a home office, because it's just not, it's not feasible to finish out a basement if it's not worth it to put that money into it and make it legal living space.
Yep.
So
what kind of, I'm looking at this section, what number should we focus on in terms of wording to kind of get it?
That's a good question. And actually, if you don't mind, as long as you're in the document, adding comments while we're going through, that would be great. So under the permitted, I would think we would need to add a section under permitted that would say, home office, and to specifically include a permitted use that there is, water and sewer. Because that's the thing. Even if you put a sink in that drains onto your garage floor or whatever, if you're going to put a toilet in there, you have to have your sewer lateral hooking up to your garage.
Yeah, and I'm just skimming. I don't see anything about like the plumbing issue. Is that further down maybe?
Well, it's actually not in there because, again, it's not allowed. So all of the numbers through 10, 11, hold on, through 15, those are all permitted. So, there's a freaking permitted use for an auditorium and a health club, but we can't have, someone put in a bathroom in their garage.
Yeah, I'm just surprised if it's, I'm surprised that Luke ran into the issue because if it doesn't say you can't have plumbing, how could we even have enforced that?
Because our attorney says it, that's how we enforce it. So, because once you put in plumbing, it becomes another principal dwelling on your lot, which is prohibited.
And is that wording somewhere in this document?
That is, hold on, let me find it again. It is section 32.
Okay.
So if you scroll back up to 32, which, come on, where's my cursor? There it is. All the way up in 32. Number of structures. In any zoning district, only one structure containing a permitted or permissible principal use may be
What page is
erected
this?
on a single zoning lot.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing section 32. Do you know what page it is?
It's 10.
Page 10, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you not have the sort of the index on the left side of your screen in the Google Doc?
No.
I don't know how you
okay.
open or close that.
I got it now.
Okay.
But mine's all like section 50. Oh, okay. 5632. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So this is, I mean, because that's like generally, I don't think we would want to change it there. It's all the way down in the accessory uses where we would have to add it as a permitted use to say, yes, you can have a secondary or, you know, two principal uses provided that XYZ is all in compliance. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like all the way. Accessory, yeah. Yeah, so it's subordinate to, subordinate in area. I would think we would need to have language in there about the size of your lot or this, like the setbacks. So that you can't like in my case, my garage is only a foot off of the property line. Because that's how it was when it was built in 1930 or whatever. So had I not gotten a variance, I would not have been able to rebuild the garage in the same place as the old one was. So, so I don't know, you know, in this case, we would probably want to have the language in there about setbacks, you know, because there needs to be enough space in order to stay 5 feet off of the property unless you're going to get a variance. And then that would add another level of protection, if you will, for neighbors.
And let's see, I can make a comment in it. What section are you thinking we could add that in?
Hold on, I just switched away from that screen. Within the permitted uses, so 559.
Okay.
And then just as an aside, I don't know if you guys both noticed, but the comments from staff that I'd added in there, just some of the things that we had been asking for with the kind of common requests or violations or whatever.
Okay, yeah. So for what else needs to happen in this section to kind of push it through? Adding home offices are allowed, talking about specifics regarding like setbacks.
I mean, would you guys think if we're adding technically a dwelling unit, and we make it a conditional use, like, would we want to go as far as saying, that that it could be a residence for someone, or, rather than going the Airbnb route, if someone wanted to rent out that space, if it is, met all of the other requirements, and it is I don't know if you've ever been in a carriage house in the Central West End. It's basically like one big room with a little, most of those have tiny little kitchens or kitchenettes or whatever. Do we want to go so far as to include that within the language, as long as it's a conditional use?
I mean, kind of like what Angela had mentioned earlier. I mean, that would definitely help in terms of keeping people here, having more density. That would definitely help more than a yoga studio or home office would.
Right. Yeah.
If our intention is to provide some additional affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'd say if ultimately it's going to be up to a vote of council. So, it's from us, it's going to go through P&Z and then ultimately the council. So, I mean, if you guys feel like this is something that, that you're in favor of, that the people that in the community are in favor of this, then, I'd say let's try to do it. And
yeah, I mean, I think now's the time to include it, right? If we're gonna make a go for it, I don't think it can hurt to include that language and then let the powers that be sort it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and if it is and that's the other thing is, if it's a rental unit, then like if it's your family member versus someone who is, renting to some random stranger, I don't know. I don't want necessarily the city to have to get all involved in who you're renting to. I think some people would say, oh, well, it's different if it's, my adult son and he's helping to pay the bills versus if it's I'm advertising this place on Craigslist and someone who's going to come in and rent may or may not have, are we going to do a credit check? Are we going to do background checks and all those things with being a landlord?
Yeah. This is not even a devil's advocate question, just something for consideration. Would a property having an additional rental property on it make that property more susceptible to like a real estate company buying it up in the future and jacking the price up? Like I don't know if that's something where like a Garcia would come in and be like, oh, and we can rent the house out and the little house behind it. I don't want it to backfire in terms of affordability.
You make a great point, because I mean, if you've ever watched that show on HGTV, where they're always young couples are always looking for $1 million homes, and I'm like, what do they do for a living?
Yes.
And you go to look for, they're looking for houses in California, and there's always, oh well, there's a rental unit here, and that that offsets the price of your mortgage. There's a tenant that lives here in your or your garden apartment in your townhouse in Brooklyn, and the tenant has been here forever. All of that stuff, yeah, you're absolutely, it does increase the value of the homeowner. So yeah, it absolutely is something that could backfire in the future. I don't know.
It's so hard to know. It's so interesting because like a few years ago, I never thought we'd be having this conversation of like everyone buying up multi-families and converting them to single families and vice versa, and not even living on the property. And now we're just in such a different time. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that consideration should stop us from including it or putting
Right.
it before the council or anything like that. Just something I was thinking out loud about.
Yeah. And if it is a conditional use, that conditional use doesn't necessarily get renewed if the property changes hands. Just like with a business, a conditional use that is within if it's a non-conforming structure, basically, that's one of the things that if you have a conditional use in a non-conforming structure, you still, if that building changes hands, you still have to come back through city council ultimately to get that conditional use renewed. So if we're making these as conditional uses, then that does have the added protection of there's no guarantee that this space is going to continue to be revenue producing if it doesn't make sense in the future.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Cool. I guess, that definitely, I'll kind of add my own notes in there, and then I'm going to throw this section back to staff, specifically Anthony. I know planning and zoning meets on the first Tuesday of every month, so they will be meeting before we meet again. So if I can get this on the Plan and Zone Commission agenda, we could potentially have something from them that would then go before council in maybe a meeting in May, which would be nice.
Yeah.
I'd like to, we've been at this for a couple of months, and I feel like, I don't want to keep spinning our wheels on sort of all of the big picture stuff if there's something that we can actually get accomplished right away.
That sounds great.
Yeah. Was there anything else while you guys were kind of going through and making your notes? Was there anything else that really jumped out at you that, hey, I wanna talk about that, or made a comment about anything?
Nothing huge, just like verbiage or stuff like that, but nothing super big.
Yeah. Okay.
I had to look back at my comments from today to see if there was anything.
Right.
It's nothing urgent. I think I more had questions on why certain things are prohibited, like why are tattoo parlors prohibited from the central business area when I know we just opened one in another part of, like, it's just a lot of it seems really dated.
Yeah. Yeah.
but nothing
Um,
crazy. I think a lot of Amber's comments I agreed with. So it'll be good when we have her back when she can speak to those, because especially when we talk about like definition of family and can more than one family live in a house together or something. Like, I think there's a lot of room for improvement there, but I don't want to discuss that really without her, because I know she had a lot of
yeah,
good thoughts there.
yeah. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of, as Anthony had mentioned, a lot of this was sort of taken from another city. So, so there's some, and a lot of it is just plain old language, where it talks about beauty parlors, massage parlors, things like that. We don't call them that anymore. I mean, the whole idea of a massage, when you use the phrase massage parlor, it really sounds very derogatory versus a massage studio now.
Yeah.
We think of massage very differently now. Same thing with tattoos. I mean, tattoos were like a tattoo parlor. You went to a tattoo parlor and they were like filthy places, and because nobody wanted, only sailors got tattoos in the 50s, right?
Right.
So yeah, it was definitely the idea of putting tattoo studios in the middle of our central business district was, and there are still people that live in Maplewood that think that would be horrendous.
I'm sure.
Definitely that generation that, that thinks that only undesirable people get tattoos. So, we don't want that kind in our central business district.
Right.
But, same kind of conversations that we were having when, I don't know if either of you guys lived here then or knew about this whole controversy, but beer cellar.
Oh yeah.
The place in
Maplewood
Clayton.
missed out. I think Maplewood missed out. I think.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Mhm.
That was, I was on planning and zoning then. It was right before I was on city council. And I was hugely disappointed that the council, I think they tabled it. And then by the time it came around for another vote, Beer Cellar had already withdrew their application. So
interesting, because we have the side project cellar, the 2 locations of that, and now Chateau Maplewood. What was the hang up? We just didn't want another like package store in town, or
it was our former mayor, who was also our former police chief, Jim White, who passed away recently, very old school police chief. He looked at it as it was a liquor store. And because they sold spirits as well as craft beer. And I mean, there was, my predecessor in my seat on council, David Servin, should know better because, David is my age, was like, well, what is the definition of craft beer? And I'm like, look it up, dude. There is a definition of craft beer.
Yeah, the council was very different in their ideas at that point. And
Yeah. I think at the time, David might have been the youngest person on council.
Yeah.
Between David and Sean, because I know Sean's a couple years older than I am, and David, I think, is maybe a year or two younger, but I think David was the youngest person on council, and Jim White was the mayor, and very much more conservative council, and they viewed it as a liquor store. They didn't understand what it was because they didn't go to the one in Clayton. But we definitely missed out on that. So, So yeah, Angela, I think before you joined the call, I was telling Kristen that when I was meeting with Anthony and Michael and Laura, we were talking about murals and advertising. I mean, because essentially murals are considered signs, which are considered advertising. And so they are, murals are actually like prohibited in our central business district.
Oh,
Yeah, like who knew, right?
I mean, the Grove has plenty of murals that aren't advertising anything except like decent stances on things, like construction good, but
Right.
So that was the meeting that I had on Friday, was just talking about how do we make this more flexible for if our property owners want to put a mural on the side of their building. But there's a whole contingent that does not want painted brick. So, and I get that, you know, but if we can make it something where it's not going to permanently damage the brick, that's you know, something that I'm interested in doing. And Laura Miller, Community Development Director, if you guys know Laura, obviously hugely in favor of public art, because Laura used to be the director of the Clayton Art Fair. So Laura knows her way around public art for sure.
yeah. Well, and we have such a reputation for art in Maplewood between Let Them Eat Art and Taste, like all of our festivals and
Yeah,
Artists First and everything
Yeah.
else you'd think, but
yeah. So,
I love the recent installment by the bus station on Manchester.
Mhm.
yeah.
That's great.
yeah. And that actually is kind of what got me started thinking about it, because that big old brick wall that's right next to it is just screaming for a mural.
You're right.
So yeah, so that's another thing that I would love to see get done. So I don't know if I've mentioned this to you guys. It's certainly getting out there as public knowledge now. This is my last year, so I'm not running for re-election next year. So I've got, you know, now a little over a year and counting to try to get some stuff done. So
How long have you served so far?
so my first term was an unexpired term, so it was only 2 years. And so I'm now just finished my 2 of my regular 3-year term. So it'll be a total of 5 when I'm done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Time flies. But
Yeah.
I kind of knew when I started that I wanted to do like, you know, 2 terms or whatever. I wanted to do the kind of that 5-6 years. So, and, you know, see what I could get done and then hopefully go back to planning and zoning. Because I'm a geek like that. But, so if you know anyone who is in Ward 1, I think Matt might run again. So we'll
It's
see.
sad. I don't even know what ward I'm in right now.
Where do you live?
I'm on Gaola. So I'm at like Sutton and Gaola.
Okay, hold on, let me see.
My ward through
Are you south or north of Manchester?
north, I believe.
All right. You
Then
might
you're
be
in
Directions.
2.
2, yeah.
Ward 2.
So yeah, you're Ward 2. So Sarah and Eric are
Yes.
your council members.
That makes sense.
So that's Ward 2.
I remember voting. So that's right.
So Eric ran on Eleanor's unexpired term. And then, you know, there was only a year left on hers, and then he had to turn right back around and run again. So although he ran unopposed both times, I think, didn't he? Lucky guy. So anyway, I don't want to keep you guys because basically, you know, we kind of got at least what I wanted to get accomplished tonight. So if there's nothing else that you guys wanted to throw out there, we can go ahead and adjourn.
Yeah, I think this was good.
Anything we need to focus on for the next meeting?
Just continue with the comments within the Google Doc. If there's definitely anything within kind of as you're digesting the conversations that we had tonight about the accessory uses, if you think of anything else, definitely make comments in there. But like I said, we'll just continue sort of the online conversation in there. And I mean, like I said, we're meeting again on the May 9th. Between now and then, I'm kind of hoping that Sean may add some comments in there because, again, with his experience on council, he's the longest serving member after Karen's gone. So I'd really like to have his insight and advice before we really take any changes back to plan and zoning. But yeah, I mean, just kind of continue the work, and we'll kind of keep going, plugging away, I suppose. So.
Okay, sounds good.
Good.
And let me know between now and then. I know some of the other committees have started meeting in person up at City Hall. So, so it's more like everyone just kind of sitting around and chatting. They're not recording those, or they're not broadcasting those sessions. So, I don't know if if you guys have a preference. I'm fine with meeting in person if you guys are. So we could certainly, I would say probably be better off if it's all or nothing. So rather than one person being virtual, I think that's going to make it harder. But let me know one way or the other. I know this time of night is still kind of challenging for some people, but we could always modify the time if we need to. If 6 o'clock or 6:30 is a little bit easier for people rather than the 5:30 if we're going to be live and in person. So
I'm flexible with video versus in person. I'm flexible with time too. So.
All right. Well, so I guess I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Seconded, or I guess let's adjourn.
Right. Thank you both for your time again. I appreciate everything that you're doing for this committee.
Great.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
All right,
Good night.
Bye.